Today's episode is sponsored by the American Homebrewers Association. Become a part of the U.S.'s largest community of homebrewers for just $48 a year by going to unitedwedrink.com/AHA. What exactly do you get with your AHA membership? How about a year-long subscription to Zymergy Magazine, the world's longest-running homebrew magazine? Exclusive deals and discounts at over 2,000 breweries, bars, and bottle shops across America. Discounts on Brewer's publication books and merchandise. Access to a huge library of previous HomebrewCon seminars and talks. And early access to purchasing tickets to each year's Great American Beer Festival and Savor. Sign up now by going to unitedwedrink.com/AHA and get a year's membership for just $48. And if you sign up now, you'll get a free gift. What's that gift? I'm not saying. You need to go see for yourself. It's pretty great. Support United We Drink, support homebrewing, and support the American Homebrewers Association at unitedwedrink.com/AHA. The opinions and statements in this podcast do not represent those of the host's employers, co-workers, family, or imaginary friends. Now enjoy the show.
Happy hour? More like amateur hour. Welcome to United We Drink.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast with more technical difficulties than a Haze Boy brewery on release day. Welcome to United We Drink, right here on unitedwedrink.com, as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and wherever fine podcasts are found. My name is Mike Urevich, and I didn't write an intro for this particular episode, so imagine one funny or not funny. It's up to you. I am joined by my two co-hosts. First up is Mr. Phil Palmisano.
Hi. Good evening. How are you?
Swell. How about you?
Oh, just peachy.
And also with us is a man of many words, Joel Codner.
Hail Satan.
He's so excited.
He's
just a joy, a ball of happiness right now.
I'm sorry, man. I mean, seriously, like, I'm upset right now. I fucked up the interview with my technical difficulties, and I feel like garbage because of, one of the questions I asked. I'm beating the shit out of myself right now, and it fucking sucks.
Well, Joel is alluding to what's coming up later in the episode, where we have an interview with Peter Anderson, lead brewer of Metropolitan Brewing in Chicago. And we're going to get to that in just a little bit. But before we do that, gentlemen, what are you drinking on this fine evening? Phil?
I am drinking Indian Red Scorpion Sour Ale with red currant, cranberry, and raspberries from Tripping Animals out of Miami.
A lot of red fruit in there.
It's quite tasty. I think it's really, really red. It sort of looks like Kool-Aid red, but I'm drinking it out of the can, so I can't really tell. Before that, during our interview, I was indulging on a Perrin Low Rise 100-calorie IPA.
Oh, that's something new?
No, they've just, it's, I believe, a
Michigan.
Yeah, it's close to the brewery. So,
Joel, what about you?
I opened another Weihenstephaner Fest beer. Got very excited when I saw these at the store the other day. I was inspired to try more traditional beers of this season from Sam Tierney at Firestone Walker, kind of schooling everybody the other day on Twitter about what Oktoberfests are really supposed to be like. And
not Marzens.
What's up?
Not Marzens.
What do you mean?
He's specifically saying that Oktoberfests are not Marzens.
Well, right, and I just picked up a whole bunch of books on lager because I really want to expand my knowledge, and obviously people like Pete that we interviewed, and a lot of places like Dovetail. I'm very inspired by all these places, and I want to get back to getting into this kind of stuff and not fucking ho-hos and a sour.
It's funny. I this past week I went to a Total Wine and I was in behind somebody in line, and they had a 2 6-packs, and I was like, "Wow, that's an interesting." And it was your fest beer, And I was standing in line with a bottle of Saison de Pont, and I was thinking the last time two people were probably standing in line with a Saison de Pont and one Stefan, or I'm gonna butcher the name, fest beer, was probably back in the 1980s, early 1990s. So the appreciation for legacy, true import beer is something that I really think we should all get behind.
When I saw Phil posting of him drinking Saison de Pont the other day, I was like, oh, that is such a timeless classic. I had last year, when I was living up in Philly, a collaboration between Saison de Pont and DuPont and Allagash that was a Saison, and it was amazing to have a beer like that again. I'm drinking in commemoration of having talked to Peter, our Copper Point lager, brand new cans as well. That should be hitting the market very soon, if not already.
And what fucking kills me is that we're talking about traditional styles, authenticity, legacy. I wanted to bet on the Kentucky Derby yesterday, like online somehow. I would have figured out how. I know you can somehow, but I don't know shit about horse racing. I just know that, I'm going to go with a name that appeals to me. I know that makes no sense because, that won't always work. Like if there might be a horse called Malort that I would totally put, I would bet the farm and the horse probably sucks. But, it's just one of those things. You bet, based on intuition or whatever. The fucking horse that won yesterday was called Authentic. Do you have any idea how much money I would have put on Authentic?
Well,
8 to 1 odds.
What were their odds? Because if you put
8 to 1.
8 to 1, not bad.
I'd have put 1,000 down on Authentic easy.
All right, so let's get into, I think, our first edition of the news since COVID really hit us.
Do you guys remember the news segment that we used to do before every major piece of the podcast?
This is news to me.
This is the news. Back when we were doing everything on a regular, show, at pre-COVID time, I like to call it, Dogfish Head Brewery announced that they were going to have a quote-unquote ongoing residency at Concrete Beach Brewery in Wynwood, Florida, down in Miami. I should say Miami, Florida, in the Wynwood district. They took it to a whole new level this past week and said that they are actually taking over the Wynwood facility. And though that's coming later in the year, you can actually follow all of their offerings on Instagram at Dogfish Head Miami. They promised tasty treats, immersive art, and collaborations. I know all three of us sort of liked the Concrete Beach spot. Are you guys excited about this? Do you think it'll work a little over 1,000 miles away from the mothership in Delaware? Mike?
I don't know if I'm excited, but I'm definitely intrigued by this because I did like the Concrete Beach spot, and not just for the spot. I liked Concrete Beach's beers, and been there twice, and first time with Joel as we did the Hurricane Dorian collaboration with a bunch of other South Florida breweries, and Kyle over there at Concrete Beach showed us all around to their amazing facility that I was blown away by how big their facility was. Like, I thought when they got announced, like, oh, they're going to have like a 7-barrel system with maybe some 15 tanks, but most of their stuff is going to get done in Cincinnati or PA at their big facilities for Sam, for Boston Beer. And they have their own canning line. They have horizontal lagering tanks. I was just astonished. And then we went as a group of friends and drank there, and they had an amazing grisette on tap that I just loved. And I enjoy their Havana lager. I enjoyed a number of their can options that I've had before. So I was surprised because I think they also had like a deal with Disney. They had an official beer for Galaxy's Edge over there. So I was very surprised, and I'm intrigued to see what's going to happen there. Concrete Beach Havana Lager is staying a brand, and I guess Dogfish Head will continue to make it there, or it'll be made at like one of the Boston beer facilities. But I think Dogfish Head will fit in well in there, especially with their whole off-centered thing, and Wynwood's a kind of off-centered neighborhood of Miami, so it might be a good match.
Let me just echo Mike's shout out to Kyle, really awesome dude. Apparently, he was one of the guys on the R&D team for the Truly Lemonade I love so much. So Kyle's the man down there. And look at Phil shaking his head. Anyway, I really wasn't sure what to think of the whole Dogfish announcement in the beginning. Initially, it didn't totally make sense to me, coming from Delaware to Miami, but I think Mike's got a point. I think that off-centeredness, that artsy kind of, whatever vibe, playful ingredients and being, I really don't know what, eccentric, off-centered, whatever you want to call it, it could work down there. Kyle and them, based on what I've seen online and some interactions I've had, they seem to be excited about it and are looking forward to what's next. So it doesn't seem like there's anything to be too concerned about, and hopefully we can have a beer with Sam at some point.
Yeah, I am curious to sort of see how it all plays out in the long run. I think that initial year that they're in the facility will be a success, just simply because of curiosity. People know the Dogfish Head brand. Putting in a facility, tap room, collaboration area, whatever you want to call it, I think people are going to get excited and sort of check it out. It could breathe some reinvigoration into that brand in particular in South Florida. Hopefully people pick up a 60-minute and try it again, because it's a damn good beer. And now they're quote-unquote local, because they will have a facility in South Florida. So I'll be curious to see how year 2 goes. As for them fitting into Wynwood, I think they fit in. They'll definitely sort of keep up with the Joneses down there, but it's going to be interesting to sort of see how year 2 goes. Can they keep that hype and that consumer attention alive moving forward? I'm also really curious to see what they do during Art Basel, when the streets get repainted, and how they handle their little square footage area. I think that'll be something that selfishly I'll sort of pay attention to.
Yeah.
So next topic for news, which is one that our Slack channel has been hot on this week. Surly Brewing Company out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, announced that they will be closing their Minneapolis beer hall, but the news really doesn't end there. A day before announcing the closure, the employees of the beer hall announced that they would be unionizing to push for increased wages and insurance coverage. Surly's owner, Omar Ansari, said that the plans were in the works well before the employees came out to announce their unionization, and that revenue was down roughly 82% compared to last year. We've all been following this story. The story has taken multiple turns within the past week. Sort of what's your take on this entire situation?
So, I think I've said before in this podcast, when it comes to the business side of this, in beer, I don't know much. I don't navigate it well. I leave that thing, to people like you, Phil, and other smarter people that understand the marketing, the business, all that good stuff. And, I like to stay on the production side, but, after 28 years in South Florida, I feel like I've got a finely tuned bullshit detector, and part of me just feels like it just doesn't smell right. Even in their own statement, they said, that this is not good timing considering, the attempted unionization by our staff, but, yeah, I mean, it is pretty bad timing. I mean, it's pretty damn coincidental if you ask me. I mean, like I said, I don't understand much about the business side of it, but a lot of smart people I do follow online think this is a classic union busting technique. I think it's unfortunate. I think people are losing respect for Surly. And look, we've got the cancel culture. We've got everybody quick to just shut everybody down and say, I don't want to hear from you ever again, over things like this. I think it's a bit more nuanced than that. Like I said, I don't fully understand it, but it's going to be hard to convince a lot of people, especially during this time when so many are out of work, so many are looking for work in these fucked up, desperate times, that, your intentions are good natured. I think everyone's fighting to survive and do what they can. And I mean, I compared, some of this to an experience I had at a previous brewery that I won't mention, but you had an owner who didn't, appreciate having to pay staff. So he did some fucking trickery, and under the guise of COVID safety or coronavirus, whatever, shut the place down and fired a lot of people via Facebook. So I necessarily think it's the same exact thing, but, I just don't like the smell of it.
Yeah, I think I echo a lot of Joel's sentiments there. But even if it is true that the plan was to close that place, making the announcement the very next day after the announcement of the unionizing was terribly poor decision making. Like, they didn't have to go through with pushing that out then. They could have waited, because they announced the closure as of November 1st or something like that. I'm sure they could have waited a couple weeks when, I hate to say it, when most of that news would have probably been in everyone's rear view mirror, and then they could have announced it at that point, but they didn't. And over the last few years, there's been news stories coming out of Surly that have rubbed me the wrong way, especially with the departure of Todd Haig. I hope I might have butchered his last name there. Their old head brewer. There apparently was some animosity there. Apparently Omar is a difficult person to work with, and I know that there are owners who, all in any business, that it can be difficult to work with. But I've heard stories about him from many different channels, and the whole darkness stuff that went on over the last couple years with moving it and canceling it and all of that. It's so crazy to think that oh, how the mighty have fallen is a term that comes to mind when you think about Surly and how highly regarded and respected they were for a long period of time. And it just seems like their names getting sent into the mud a little bit here, whether that is by other people or their own doing, is up for debate. But it's hard for me to swallow a pill that says that this wasn't done to be intentional in some way towards the unionizing employees.
From a business perspective, his sales trends, or their sales trends, obviously overnight didn't just plummet down to 82% in the middle of August, September. So I do believe that this was probably something that was in the works. as for the timing, I think one thing to call out is we're in the brewing industry and we're not necessarily in the PR industry. I don't think any of us are good PR people, to say the least. That said, the timing was atrocious, and honestly, I don't know if it would have been worse to just announce it the same day and just say like, hey, unfortunately, due to business, it's closing, or maybe have an internal memo that I 1000% subscribe to CYA on everything, and I cover my ass and put everything I possibly can in writing. Whether he could release something that shows a timestamp that says like, hey, look, we were talking about this.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I understand that they want to unionize. I want to help all of them as much as I possibly can. We're going to try and run our tasting room until November. Feel free to unionize. That's fine. But just so you guys know, once winter hits, unfortunately, we're going to have to close the doors. Our budget doesn't allow us to run at the state approved 50% occupancy or 20% occupancy. I think that would have been a little bit more respectful. Hell, hindsight's 2020. It's an interesting situation, to say the least.
Yeah.
So, final piece of news. Multiple sources, as everyone knows, have reported shortages of aluminum cans amid a increased sales of packaged beer during COVID-19. This is impacting breweries large and small, from every level, and large meaning like some of the big guys are dealing with some large aluminum shortages. Canarchy Craft Brewing Collective, which we don't talk about too much on this podcast, they came out this week and put a unique spin on how they are dealing with these potential shortages, specifically of their two flagship brands, Oscar Blues Dale's Pale Ale and Cigar City High Life. The Oscar Blues Dale's Pale Ale cans, moving forward, they will be wrapping both of these cans at least for the month of September, and the Oscar Blues Dale's Pale Ale can will have a handwritten letter from Dale himself stating the following: 2020 is weird. First toilet paper, now aluminum, but there's no way some supply chain shenanigans would stop us from getting the freshest mother of a pale ale to you. We repurposed some cans and kept the beer flowing. Dale. Cigar City took a little bit of a different approach, and I shared it in our Slack channel, and we're going to share it on our Instagram this week. 6 unique highlight cans, sort of tying the beer itself back to the quote-unquote holy game of highlight, with different poses and sport throws of highlight players. So all that said, what's your spin on the unique approach that Canarchy decided to take on an aluminum shortage?
I think that it's kind of cool. The only thing that I have a question about is aluminum's in shortage, but these are still aluminum. You're
old
just
cans.
Are you taking old cans and rewrapping them?
They're reusing. If you are a fan of Oscar Blues or Cigar City, you've realized that both of those brands have gone through a rebranding of sorts throughout the past few years. And Canarchy is actually utilizing some of their old can artwork. So excess cans that were around the brewery, brands like Penner, old Dale's Pale Ale cans, utilizing some old artwork cans of some seasonal brands, truly recycling empty vessels, that really didn't have any use, but because of can contracts, you were sitting on excess capacity of empty vessels. So
I completely get you now. At one point last year when I was living in Philly, I grabbed a 4-pack of Modern Times cans that had a wrap on it, and I could see like there's something underneath this. So I peeled the wrap off once I bought it, obviously, and it was a different brand underneath. And I looked online and saw that they had to reuse. They didn't get the cans for the brand in soon enough before the beer was ready. There was a delay, so they took another brand's cans, got wraps, and used them that way. And I now that I understand, I think that this is a cool, unique way of dealing with said shortage. I know we haven't had too many issues ourselves at Copper Point, but I know other people have, so much so like we gave all of our we sold all of our excess 16-ounce bright cans to another brewery nearby who were unable to order some from their normal supplier. So we didn't have any plans for a 16-ounce can for a little while. So we're like, yeah, you guys can come by and pick them up, and they're yours. We just got an order in last week of like 12 pallets of like our new printed cans, some 12-ounce blanks, and we got a pallet of 16-ounce blanks too. So it seems like, and I remember at the beginning of all this, crowlers were hard to get for a little bit too. There was about a month lead time on those from our normal supplier. But I think things will, I feel like the cans have gone through ebbs and flows before, and I think they will continue to do so, especially if there's such a big push towards more packaging, something that we're going to talk about with Peter in a little bit. So I think that this is cool, what Canarchy's doing to recycle, in a sense, unused cans.
Yeah, and it's funny because when COVID hit, it was crowlers, and then people were talking about carbon dioxide here and there, like, oh, there's going to be a CO2 shortage. And it's funny to see aluminum, and aluminum is getting national attention right now. And before that, it was getting national attention due to taxes. But the aluminum that the national attention aluminum's getting right now is the fact that overnight, literally, companies had to flip the switch and say, okay, well, we can't put beer in kegs anymore, so now we got a can. Maybe sell it through our tasting room, hopefully sell it through a little bit of distribution, and even the large guys, your Millers, your ABs, they saw an increase in their sales in the off-premise. So when this situation came to me, the Highlight situation in particular, I think looks really, really cool. There's a social media campaign behind collecting all 6 of the cans. If you sort of take a picture of it and use hashtag #IonHighlight, the brewery will do something. I don't know what it is, but they want to show off the collection. From what I understand, all 6 of the cans will not be in one 6-pack or 12-pack or variety pack. So multiple purchases would have to happen, I believe, for you to be able to collect all 6.
Oh, okay. So it's not just like every 6-pack will have each one.
Correct. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So some 6-packs could have 2 of one, 3 of the other, and 1 of one. So, but yeah, pretty cool. I was pretty excited about it. As a homer and longtime fanboy of Highlight in particular, I am super excited to not have holes on the shelf as much as possible, and just have fresh beer put out into the market.
Yeah. So all during that, Joel's computer took a crap. Technical difficulties, and doesn't look like he's going to be able to get back in on this recording. So we'll get his take on it some other time. I think we'll just go ahead and move into the main part of the episode. We are really honored and happy to have a guest on this episode. We are joined by Peter Anderson. He is the lead brewer for Metropolitan Brewing in Chicago. We get a chance to sit down and talk to him about his history in brewing, Metropolitan, and their lager-only brewery that they have been at since 2009, and how that works out for them, how they're able to stick to their guns. We talk a little bit about Chicago. We talk a little bit about politics, which he really loves to talk about. And I think it was a really fun conversation. We hope that you enjoy it. So sit back and relax and join us in talking with Peter Anderson from Metropolitan Brewing. All right, Peter, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
It took a long time to get here, but we're here. And let's start things off with this. We are a Florida-based podcast, so a lot of people might not be familiar with Metropolitan Brewing and yourself. So why don't you give us a little bit of background on you, your brewing background, how you got into the whole game here, and just kind of let people know what Metropolitan and yourself are all about.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Peter Anderson. I am not native Chicago. I'm from Seattle, Washington originally. Metropolitan's a lager-only brewery. We do make a couple ales during the year, but it's a Kolsch, and that is lagered. So everything is cold. We cold brew, we cold filter, we cold package. I got into this game by getting fired from a job. I worked in the restaurant industry. I was a restaurant manager, and I wasn't very good at it. And they very justifiably let me go. And it was the right thing for them to do. They gave me a little bit of severance, and my wife said, well, you've always wanted to try home brewing, so why don't you go buy a homebrew kit with your last paycheck? Long story short, it became all encompassing. I read every book I could get my hands on. I'm on homebrewtalk.com, just reading everything and not posting at all because I didn't want to sound like an idiot. And then 3 years later, I basically was just taking homebrew to every festival I could get into, trying to give my beer to brewers, saying, I'll work for free. I don't care what it takes. Let's do this kind of thing. And that led me to be a volunteer at a new brewery. And my first day at that new brewery was their first brew day ever. And I had no idea what I was doing. Never been in a commercial brewery at all before, just trying to keep up or whatever. And the head brewer was this older guy. Maybe he knew what he was doing, maybe he didn't, but his strike temperature was 170 degrees. And I was like, how many degrees are you going to drop? I didn't know. I was maybe, homebrew, you drop 10, 11, maybe 12 degrees. He's like, oh, we'll come in right around 50, 150. And I'm like, all right, man, cool. And then he never took a mash temperature. He never took a mash pH. And I was like, I do those things and I'm a home brewer. Clearly this guy doesn't know what he's doing. And whatever, if the beer gets into the fermenter, it finishes out at 7 Plato and it's supposed to be an IPA. I'm just all right, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. So I worked there for about a year. I got hired eventually, worked there for about a year. And then across the street from that brewery was Metropolitan Brewing. And I would basically just made friends with them and let them know that I was kind of looking around for something. And they ended up hiring me part-time at first and then full-time. And here we are for almost 5 years later, I think. And I'm their lead brewer, so I produce wort. Sometimes I get recipe development in there as well. Sometimes I don't. Most of the time I'm just making beer. Following the recipe, as it were. But yeah, I love it. I love working there. We have an awesome space right on the Chicago River. Big old tap room out there, huge patio, and half of it you can sit on. And as an act of unification, I have a tiny bottle of Malort that I would like to take part in. If anyone else has one nearby, they're welcome to have some too.
Mine's
I've got them downstairs.
Cheers. Joel, you're not allowed to leave.
Yeah. You might not know this. I'm the only one on this show who doesn't like Malort.
I did binge listen like 15 episodes, so I am aware of that, yes.
I
Oh my
apologize for your ear holes.
Mhm.
Like, I mean,
You said you've been at Metro for 5 years. How long has the brewery been about?
Yeah, brewery shipped its first kegs of beer in 2009.
Wow.
Other production breweries in Chicago at the time was Goose Island and Two Brothers. Revolution and Half Acre opened within the year after we opened. Yeah, and that was our original location. We had about 4,000 square feet. Toward the end there, we were so out of capacity that we would start the day by putting like 12 pallets of stuff out on the sidewalk so that we could work for the day. And then we'd have to bring it all in at the end of the night. It was pretty wild, man. And we moved into our current facility almost 3 years ago. And now we have 25,000 square feet, which is a lot more manageable.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I first got to meet you back in December of last year. I was up there for 48 hours with my wife for a business trip for her. And, you messaged me on Twitter and said, hey, come by. I'm working the tap room today. And I'm so glad you did, because there were so many places for me to go in so little time. And I was scrambling and I had no real plan. And we went and came and saw you first. And it's an experience that I've been thinking about constantly since then. There's such a contrast between there and here. I feel like Florida can be very trend heavy and following all the hype and I've seen a lot of breweries come up and open up and a lot of really good guys who, very well meaning, very, solid beers, seemingly getting impatient. Like, oh, we got to go for that funky Buddha money. We got to start putting pancakes in our beer. We've got to see what breakfast cereal is on sale. And it's maddening because I want an experience here like you have at Metro. I mean, it couldn't have been a better day for me. I'm eternally grateful. Just all of the amazing, solid, traditional styles, and everything tasted great. The staff was amazing. You were awesome. You took us in the back and we got to drink Pilsner from the Bright Tank. It was just phenomenal. And I get very down on the scene down here sometimes, and I don't mean it against like anyone personally, but it just really wears me out that it seems like it's this arms race of adjuncts and hype and colors. And I mean, while I was trying to get my computer up and running here, I wandered over to Instagram and saw somebody with a goddamn glass of beer that had whipped cream spread all around the rim, like they had used like a cake icing spatula around it. Like I could have thrown my phone out the window if I weren't trying to get online. But how do you guys navigate the hype heavy trendy waters of 2020, sticking to your guns like that? And do you get any blowback? Do you get people looking for hazies or pastry stuff?
Well, first, thank you for your compliments. That's very flattering. We were very glad that we could make that evening happen for you and for all the other people that were there. How do we navigate it? We don't. We do exactly what we want to do. And if people want to drink that, that's great. And if they don't, we're not chasing after them. One of our taglines that we put on our t-shirts is beer for the proletariat. And the idea is that we want our beer to be as universally appealing as possible. So my dad loves our Kolsch. My father-in-law loves our Pilsner because it tastes like the beer they grew up with. Like the brands we brew, we're trying to make them timeless so that we don't have to worry about now because they will always be good, and really, like, we had a little bit of a head start because we started this brewery in Chicago when there weren't a lot of breweries around, and we got to pick our spot and stand in it and be the only ones there for so long. And that's a little bit of an advantage, but as time has gone on, Revolution is like 50 times bigger than we are. Half Acre is 40 times bigger than we are, and they're making tremendous beer. And the reason we can stand up with them is because we make something very specific, I would say better than most people in our market. And people can just depend on it. Like if you grab a crankshaft, it's going to taste like crankshaft every single time. It's that consistency year to year, month to month that really like keeps people coming back, especially now with the COVID pandemic. We're seeing our core brands absolutely carrying the day. Like people in our market are looking for things that are dependable and not the newest, hottest thing. I don't know what it is in the rest of the country, but that's what we're seeing here.
Well, that actually brings up a really good topic, which unfortunately COVID we're living in right now. How is this directly impacting your tap room, the availability of some of your beers? You just said seasonality or one-off stuff really isn't of importance. It's that tried true flagship brand that everybody knows. How's it impacting Chicago in general, but then also your business specifically?
Sure. So, Chicago was hit pretty early. And our mayor and governor completely shut everything down. No bars, no restaurants, the parks were closed, essential services only, basically. And we did that for over a month, I think it was, maybe a little longer than that even. And that was the right thing to do. We basically, in the brewery, we were selling beer to go here and there. Our distributor was still selling package, but it was a lot of packaging off of kegs and stuff that we had just produced to get into the summer. But really what's happened since we've been able to get our tap room reopened, which I think was like mid-June, we don't have any indoor seating at all. It's not allowed. We don't serve food. And as we all know, food is a known coronavirus preventative. So stupid. So we have a patio. Our patio has like 18 tables on it. 18 tables? Something like that. And right now we're doing similar numbers on the patio that we did in the tap room last year, which is to say we're paying rent on a tap room that doesn't make money and paying rent on a patio that does. Yeah. Fortunately, we've been able to navigate it, get some loans, PPP money, that kind of thing to kind of keep us afloat. It seems like we're going to be fine. Winter is a whole nother bag of beans because it does get extraordinarily cold here and patios will just be completely nullified. So that'll be an interesting challenge. But overall, we've only seen one or two breweries close here, which is really surprising. One of them was probably on its way out already. And it was kind of the last nail kind of thing. But we used to do 50-50 keg to package, and now we're almost entirely package. We would normally brew 400 barrels of Oktoberfest. We only brewed 120. Wow. Our next seasonal we'd brew 90 barrels of, we're going to do 30. But at the same time, we rolled out cans for the first time ever. And we have we put our two biggest selling flagships into cans, plus a Helles that we've never packaged before. And that thing is just crushing. It's flying out the door. And we added a Dortmunder in cans as well. So we have new stuff for people, but it's all stuff that we were going to put out anyway. And the timeline just got pushed back, So it's been interesting. Let me tell you, cans in our brewery was a big deal. And now they're outpacing the bottles, which
that's awesome.
Is not a surprise.
Yeah, I think we saw, Phil could probably confirm this because he's our IRI numbers guy. The core brand stuff became super popular down here, because that was what was in grocery stores. That was what was in convenience stores that remained open. And we were selling to go in our place, and we were putting on special things here and there for crowler fills, but it was our 6-packs of lager and A10, our red IPA, and our Pilsner, and that stuff that was continually going out the door super fast. And even into today now, our package numbers have picked up considerably. Our kegs have gotten back to being a decent number, but yeah, we skew super high, just like you with the package. Maybe not almost entirely, but I would say we're probably in the 70 to 30 range on our package to kegs now, when we were pretty split.
We used to have some brands that were like keg only, and the packaging guys would like bitch and moan, oh, we got a big kegging week, we got all these kegs to wash. And now like the tables turned and it's like, really, another bottling day? Holy crap, can we just fill some kegs? It's so much faster. It's like, I'm working in packaging, the cellar guy's working in packaging. I mean, our whole staff is only 5 people, and normally like 2 guys can handle packaging with a little bit of help, but now literally all of us have 3 days in packaging every week because there's so many bottles to fill and so many cans to fill. And then it's like, yeah, we're going to fill a pallet of kegs, and then that's it for this beer. We'd like it to get back to 70-30. That would be nice.
How many barrels did Metro make last year?
Last year we made just under 4,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's not from the numbers that you were saying for like how much you were anticipating doing for Oktoberfest. I would have expected way more.
Well, Oktoberfest for us outsells 2 of our year-round brands.
Really?
2.5 months.
Wow.
As a seasonal?
Yeah. Yeah. So my first year as the brewer there, we were still in our old space on a 15-barrel 2-vessel system, and we had to produce something like 360 barrels of Oktoberfest. And we do our production meeting on Monday, and they're like, all right, Peter, tomorrow you're brewing 2 turns of crankshaft. And then Tuesday you're brewing 2 turns of Oktoberfest. And then Thursday you're brewing 2 turns of Oktoberfest. And then Friday you're brewing 2 turns of Oktoberfest. And that was my life for like 6 weeks. It's just brewing Oktoberfest ad nauseum. And so we finally moved into our new system, which is 30-barrel 3-vessel. And it's like, I can knock out all the Oktoberfest in 1 week, which is fantastic. It's so much easier. But yeah, it's become a beast. It's taken on a life of its own, put it that way. We'll go on a weekend, and like last summer in the tap room, we'd go through like 8 kegs of Oktoberfest every week, easily.
Wow.
Just flying, liter mugs, the whole 9 yards.
And this year, you guys, no can on that, just bottle, but you did put small format out into the market.
We actually did put it in cans. We when we were deciding how to package it, we realized that we didn't have any packaging for 6-packs or labels at all. And so it became a pretty easy decision, just be like, well, instead of investing all that money into 6-pack carriers and labels, why don't we just get a can label and do that? So we did 1,200 cases of cans of Oktoberfest to our distributor, and they are gone. They're already gone.
Wow.
And is that just the Chicago metro area?
Yeah. I think a little bit got to the rest of Illinois, but the vast majority of it was local, yeah.
So Joel and I's brewery we used to work for, we did a little over 4,000 barrels a year there. We never made close to 1,200 cases of anything like that. That's nuts.
Yeah, it's a monster. But when it's over, then we get to make the Rye Dunkel, which is a much more difficult brew day. So
lots of rice holes.
Is that the one you were talking about that day where it was like just this day-long runoff?
Yeah, Arc Welder is like, if we're doing 2 turns, it's pretty easily like a 14-hour day. Though I did convince the boss to get some bioglucanase this year, so we can skip the beta-glucan rest, which is a whole beast on its own. So we'll see. We're only making 1 turn of it this year. Again, it's a seasonal, so we're going to make 30 barrels and keep most of it in-house. We might send a pallet of bottles to our distributor, and that'll be about it, People like them core brands.
I feel like that totally speaks to what I was getting at earlier about the culture there. I mean, that is just insanely impressive. I feel like there are some breweries here who wouldn't do that with some of their hype stuff.
Not
As
at
far
all.
as like long brew days.
No, I mean like, sorry, I was just going back to what you were saying about the Oktoberfest and the volume, and it being gone already. I mean, does
Yeah.
it seem like the prevailing? And I don't mean to go backwards here in the conversation, but I mean just to kind of respond to that. Does it feel like that's more of like what the culture is out there? Because Mike was kind of interviewing me on our last episode, and he had this question about like what's my obsession with Chicago, and aside from being a native there the first maybe quarter or so of my life, that last trip really impressed me, as well as a few years ago when I got to do the quick course at Siebel. um you know it feels more like working man, blue collar. It's not as flashy and trendy, and to hear you talk about those numbers, I think just really speaks about like what beer is really like out there.
For us, yeah, that tracks, but I mean, there's plenty of people putting pastry stouts and froyo machines out here. Like, there's tons of
my
hazy
favorite.
IPA. I mean,
Oh,
we've
so
taken
good.
gold in the hazy IPA category 2 years in a row. Like Alarmist took it the first year. By the way, Gary Gully, you're not listening to this, but you're welcome for letting you intern at our brewery. The owner of Alarmist got done with Siebel and interned at Metro, and then went and opened his own brewery and got gold and hazy IPA. So there you go. The first year it was a style. So thanks. You're welcome, jerk. Yeah, maybe there's plenty of that here, but the reason that we get away with what we're doing is because people trust us. It's consistent. It's quality. Like when we put out Oktoberfest, you know exactly what you're getting. It's not going to be different from last year. It's going to be exactly the same beer. People trust it. There was an account out in the suburbs that would just flat out order like 48 kegs right when we shipped it. Just take all of it. And like one account, there you go, here's 48 kegs. And that would be, a quarter of the kegs we'd send.
Would you say
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, would you say it feels good to take those hazy awards though, and not have it be, Boston or wherever, so they can be even more like up their own asses about it?
I mean, it's hard to like say it feels good or it doesn't feel good. Like, we're not a brewery that enters a lot of beer competitions. Like, we're really proud of our friends that have won those awards. Old Irving Brewing being one of the other ones that I think they won either silver or gold last year at GABF for that. Like, they're great guys and make awesome beer. Are we proud of them? 100%. Do we care that New England has to like stick it in their craw a little bit? We don't really care. We're just here to make good beer for people. Like, Chicago is that working city. Like, make whatever you want, drink whatever you want, have fun with it, go as deep into the rabbit hole as you want. We're not going to judge you for it. Just have a beer. It's fine. Knock off with your shift. Like, I'm drinking a raspberry lime kettle sour that my wife's brewery makes. It's silly, but it tastes delicious.
Do you want to shout it out?
Urban Brew Labs. Yeah, they actually bought our old brewery and opened up shop there about 3 years ago, right after we moved out. And my wife just walked in to say hi.
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 How's it going?
Bye.
Hi.
So yeah, Urban Brew Labs. He's actually a Boston native, the owner is, but his mom lives here and he moved back to be closer to family and whatnot. And he's got a raspberry lime kettle sour called Lime and Mother Pucker. I mean, it's delicious.
Is that what you're drinking?
Yeah.
Great name.
So we're gonna wrap things up here in just a little bit. Anything that you want to add in here, Peter? Mention, ask of us?
Yeah. Can you three promise that Florida will be blue in this election?
I can't promise if they can count our votes. I'm still not confident in that, unfortunately. as the one true Floridian on the podcast. We'll do our best, though.
I can almost guarantee that the counties that we live in will be blue, but the whole state,
I'm going to shout out one organization.
Go for it.
Fair Fight 2020 is Stacey Abrams' organization to fight voter suppression. She lost the Georgia gubernatorial race because of voter suppression. If you have $5 or more, or $1 or more, please donate to her. It is very important that we get every vote in this election for either side, and that democracy continues to live.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say about that.
Done deal.
You want to plug anything? Promote Twitter handles or?
Sure, yeah. So my Twitter handle is PC Anderson. The C is my middle initial, has nothing to do with my politics whatsoever. If you do follow me, I do post about politics very frequently. And then kind of crap on. I got a new hashtag, hashtag fuck chunks. It's all about fucking chunky beer because that stuff's gross. Please don't do it. And then on Instagram, you can follow me at Barley Tech. Otherwise, come to Metropolitan. If you live in Chicago, have a beer on the patio before it's too late. Summer's ending.
I have one last question. Where would you recommend one move should they be so inclined in Chicago?
What neighborhood in Chicago?
Yeah.
All of them are very expensive. I really think right now Avondale and Albany Park are kind of the next up and coming neighborhoods. A lot of good culture starting in those areas. I live in Andersonville, but it is super overpriced, and I have the only cheap apartment up here, and only because I moved in 10 years ago and my landlord likes me.
And you're named after the neighborhood.
I am named after the neighborhood. Well, I moved here because the Hop Leaf is here. The best beer bar in the whole city is 2 blocks from my house. And shout out to Michael Roper, who has a very safe, comfortable environment during these COVID times. It's one of the only places that I feel comfortable going, actually, which is really nice.
Awesome.
Nice.
And they have us on draft, so, you know.
Extra perks.
So, Peter, I'm gonna write out with one final question for you.
Sure.
Taco Bell order. What are you ordering? What and you've never heard this question before on United We Drink. This is a brand new one. We're starting it today with you. What are you ordering at Taco Bell?
I'll tell you what. So a mile from our brewery, there's a Menards, our favorite hardware store. Across the street from the Menards is a Taco Bell. I tell you what, if I'm near a Taco Bell, I'm going to take care of the boys back at the brewery. We're getting the party pack, Doritos, Tacos, Locos, with Supreme, everything on them. They better put enough hot sauce in that packet to drown an elephant because we like our hot sauce. You know what I'm saying? That's the order. We're getting tacos for the boys.
Awesome. Very good answer.
Well, Peter, thank you again for joining us. Thank you for putting up with some technical difficulties and waiting out said technical difficulties. No names being named, Joel. Keep doing what you guys are doing over there. I look forward to the day that I can come to Chicago and drink some beer over there.
Hit me up, find me on Twitter, send me a DM. I'm happy to take care of the industry. That's all we got, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you ever find your way down here in Florida, hit us up, please. We'd be more than happy to show you around our breweries as well. So,
don't tempt me. I got to get down there before you fall into the ocean,
I heard winter's cold up there. Somebody told me that recently. So,
True story.
Hopefully we can get COVID under control and you can come visit soon.
Travel should happen someday. I hope.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you, man.
All right, have a good one.
All right. That was a really fun time, despite having
That was a great conversation.
Yeah. I mean, I've interacted with Peter on Twitter a number of times. Been following him for a while now, and it was really nice to actually talk with him somewhat in person over Zoom, and he's a really smart dude about this brewing industry, game, the techniques. He's just a smart dude in general, and a really fun conversation. And hopefully, maybe sometime he can come by here again and have some more fun with us. As I said,
Yeah, for sure.
I look forward to being able to get up to Chicago and having some of their beer someday.
You know, it was funny this past week. I was thinking about different places I wanted to revisit in my life, just like, areas, and Chicago was like number one. Before we started recording, we were talking about different trips to Chicago, and every single time I go, I find something new and exciting about that area. And it just makes me want to go back. The people are awesome. Now knowing so many more breweries, I'm super stoked. I'm really disappointed their Oktoberfest sold out so quickly, because I was definitely, as he was talking about it, I was pulling up the Benny's website to see if Benny's had it and if I could get it shipped, and if not, maybe Liquor Barn or one of those other non-sponsors of the show would get us some beer down here with a Malort order. So,
did you find any?
No, I didn't. So, just shame, but it is what it is.
I know we've talked in person. By the way, we still never got Joel back, so it's just Phil and I. We've talked before about how cool it would be for the three of us to each go and like spend a weekend in the areas where we grew up, so that we can kind of show each other around, and like Joel showing us around Chicago, you in Tampa, and me in Philly. And I still think that is something that we should do someday, whether it be documented or just for our own enjoyment. Because I mean, I think about it every day of like when friend of the show Kevin came up and visited me in Philly, and how I got to show him around the city that I love so much, and show him where I like to eat and drink and walk around and enjoy. And I would, even though I've had a good bit of experience in Tampa with you and Joel in tow, I would love for you to be able to like kind of show us what Tampa is to you, and Joel to show us what Chicago is to him. And I think that would be a really fun time.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a short trip for CBC up in Philadelphia, but during the days we were stuck in banquet hall rooms and stuff like that. So
yeah. I didn't know the city as well then as because I grew up in the suburbs. And now after spending a year, I'm by no means an expert in the city, but I mean, I know a lot more about the city than I did even then.
Yeah, for sure.
But
that was fun. That was,
yeah.
We were talking about doing interviews on this podcast for, I think, since we started the podcast back up again, and being able to actually execute it, and have all three of us on, I should say, at least during the interview, it is a positive thing. So, super excited, looking forward to more of them. I think we do have another interview lined up, hopefully for the next show, and hopefully we can keep this sort of rolling where we get that fourth voice in.
We won't go ahead and say who it is just yet. We'll maybe put that. Maybe you should follow us on our social media at United We Drink on Twitter, or United We Drink
Highly
Pod.
recommended.
And we will leak that information to you, just like we are leaking Canarchy information to you as well. We're now leakers. You Wiki United We Drink leaks. United We Drink leaks. Only available here on UnitedWeDrink.com. Phil,
And
you
we don't
wanna-
charge you on a Patreon page or anything of that nature for our leaks. You know, we give them to you for free because that's how things should be. And I've given
and
up
we're
on
also
the Patreon
dumb with
thing.
money.
So yeah.
Phil, do you want to plug anything before we sign off here?
I'm trying to be more active on Twitter. So you can follow me at Dos Birigos. And on Instagram you can follow me on ppalmisano77 and see my adventures in family life and cartooning.
You can follow Joel at Florida DUH Brewer on both Twitter and Instagram. He's been in a mood of disabling his Twitter account for a day here and there. So anytime you see that happen, don't worry about him. He's most likely okay. If you are really worried about him, you can always get in touch with me at Mike Loves Beer on Twitter or Instagram, as I am now. I have dubbed myself as of last week his official spokesperson for when he nukes his Twitter account for a couple days. Other than that, check out our store if you want to buy a shirt, button, pin, or even mask. They are available at unitedwedrink.com/store. You can subscribe to this show on any of the big podcast apps, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, all of them. You should be able to find this show. If you're on Apple Podcasts and you have the time, it literally takes like 2 minutes, if that, and it doesn't hurt at all to leave us a 5-star review, a 5-star rating, and if you can write a review, that also helps the show out a lot. I guarantee it does not cause physical pain. So
It actually makes you feel better about yourself.
yes, you did a good deed
It's scientifically
to a couple,
proven.
well, 3 questionable people. But yeah, we'll be back here in 2 weeks for another interview. And for Joel, cheers. Enjoy Arby's.
Hail Satan. Enjoy Arby's. See you guys.
We'll just use the audio from the call.
Okay.
You'll sound like you're in a toilet.
Yeah, maybe go sit in your bathroom. It'll like cancel itself out.
Oh.